What's up, everybody? This is Brendan with Drum with BPM, and today I want to talk about the 3 things that you need to do if you want to be great at fast, controlled singles. Let's get into it. Alright, the first thing you want to do is use the metronome to your advantage. Obviously, if you're a serious drummer and actively working to get your singles faster, you're using a metronome on a regular basis. But how do you use the metronome? The standard operating procedure is to use quarter notes, right? This is a metronome at 150. Absolutely nothing wrong with playing quarter notes on your metronome at 150, right? If I'm playing a legatos exercise, like I have tons linked in my playlist, check them out if you need them. We're playing some legatos, 8 on a hand. Something like that. That works great. But as soon as you get past a certain threshold, for me it's around 170, 180, thinking in quarter notes starts to feel overwhelming. It starts to feel too fast. If you get to this point, you're playing at, 180, let's go 186, right? Let's see what that sounds like. That's moving, right? Now, if I'm thinking eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, it starts to get overwhelming in my brain. So what I like to do is if I want to play, let's just make it an even 200, right? I want to play at 200 beats per minute. Right? I don't want to be thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... That's too much math. That's way too much to think about. So what I like to do is cut the met in half. Let's go to halftime. Right? This helps me slow down in my brain and think much slower. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1. And I don't even need to think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I know how to count to 4, right? You know how to count to 4. You're great at it. I guarantee you, if you're watching this video, you're a great enough drummer that you don't need to count in your brain to get to 4 or 8 notes, right? So you feel this. This becomes more about what drumming was meant to be, is a feeling, right? So if we want to do the same exercise, 200 beats per minute, 8 on a hand, let's feel it in halftime. So here we go. This is the exact same exercise. 1, 2, here we go. Right? And then all of a sudden, I feel in control. All of a sudden, I have more brain space. I'm not being bombarded with the quarter note of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. It's too intense. There's too much to think about, right? What I like to do is find the flow, where I can find the actual big beats. Where is this rhythm going? Why do I want to play perfectly in time? And also, the less clicks you have per beat, it makes you stay in time better. It means you have to get better at being in time as a drummer, which is your #1 priority. So my first big tip, at certain points, use the metronome to your advantage. Cut it in half if you need to. You can even cut it again to do it every 4 beats. That's a super advanced idea. If you want to make sure you can play perfectly in time every 4 notes, right? Divide whatever it is that you're working on by 4. So if this, we break it again down to 50, and then we would try and play in time. Make sure we line up every 4 notes. So whatever works best for you, if you love the quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it really helps you, that's awesome. But if you're at a certain point and you're working on singles or an 8th note pattern or whatever it is that you're working on, and you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not making progress, you're having a tough time understanding the idea or having a tough time feeling it, try cutting the met in half. Trying feeling in halftime, that's where the groove comes in. That's where you start to be a drummer again and not so much of a technique machine that you're trying to 1 and 2 and 3 and wrist turn and my fulcrum pressure and all the things that you think about when you're trying to be great and trying to get perfect. Go back to a groove and go back to feeling. Alright, the second thing you want to work on is finding the proper velocity to put into your stick into the drum. Alright, and what do I mean by that? When you're playing slower tempos, you can obviously play much higher, you can obviously play with more velocity, more speed into the head, right? Into the drum, and the stick bounces right back up for you. That's super critical to understand that idea. I can't play the exact same velocity that I can at 100 beats per minute at 200 beats per minute, right? It's just significantly faster, so I have less time to rebound the stick. Obviously, this makes perfect sense. You already knew that. But what do you need to do with that information is you need to figure out what the correct velocity is for you. Sometimes what happens is when drummers play faster, they lighten up. Just like we talked about, that makes perfect sense. You have to do that to keep the alignment of physics in the universe to continue to be what it is, right? We're not robots, so this is what happens. What I see a lot and what I've seen when I've taught students for years is they lighten up too much. So what does that mean? If we're playing, again, at 200 beats per minute, you have to find that proper velocity. So what's the reality? The reality is, I can play much higher. I can play much faster with more velocity than I just played. Right? That might not be exactly what I'm going for, but okay, so now I know that I have the chops to play this much higher with much more velocity. So if you take too much velocity off the stick, then you lose control. You're letting the drum do too much work. You want to be in total control of every time the stick hits the drum. And if you're not in control, who is? Right? We want to use rebound to our advantage, but we don't want to rely on rebound. So if you're not putting enough velocity into the drum, then you're letting the drum do too much work and you're losing control. So what happens when you try and play really fast singles like 16th notes at 200 and you're not putting enough velocity into the stick, into the drum, then you're not in control and you're relying on the drum. You're trying to control rebound as opposed to being a participant in playing. Right? We've all gotten to tempos where we're just holding on for dear life, right? And obviously that means we need to work harder to get control at that point, but control is so important here for you to get your velocity in the proper range so that when you're playing, you know exactly what it feels like to play 16th notes at 200 beats per minute, 16th notes at 185 beats per minute, whatever it happens to be, and you know you have the chops to do it. So, moral of this story, don't play too light, don't rely on the rebound of the drum, use the rebound of the drum to match your velocity, and you be in control. Now the third thing, the last thing I want to talk about is make sure you've mastered your technique at 80 beats per minute all the way to 200 beats per minute. If you cannot play legato strokes and singles and 16th notes at 80 beats per minute with total control and every tempo in between, there's no way you can play it with the consistency, the accuracy that you want to play with at 200 beats per minute. Make sure that as you're getting faster, you are not allowing your technique to change. We know how to hold the stick properly. However you hold the stick, I hold a stick one way. I talk about it in my Introduction to Singles video. Check that out if you need a refresher on good technique and what to think about when you're playing singles. But you need to make sure you have your technique completely honed in. How much space should you have in your fingers between your palm? Are you squeezing the heck out of the stick? And then, right? If you're doing that, obviously you're never going to master singles. You're not using the rebound, but it all comes back to the basic fundamentals. If you're not approaching what it feels like to play singles at very slow tempos, then there's no way that you're going to be able to play them at fast tempos. You have to take it super slow and build up to those goal tempos, right? That's why I have my exercises on singles broken down the way that I do. I got videos all the way from 80 beats per minute, and we're working all the way to 200 beats per minute and even past that. And what we do in those videos is we just slowly speed up and change nothing. So by the time you get to the end of the video, you don't even realize you've gone up by 10 clicks. That's the whole goal in developing good technique that you can apply at the highest tempos imaginable. You want to trick your brain into not changing. So make sure you've mastered slow tempos. I know it might seem boring and it might seem like it takes forever. Trust me, it doesn't. It takes a good amount of time to memorize, build that muscle memory into your forearms, into your hands, develop that good feel. But it's so worth it, because if you develop it correctly, then you know how to play 200 and beyond forever. Forever. But if you don't, then you'll always have to keep going back. You'll always have to start changing stuff. You'll be tight. You'll be uncomfortable. You'll make mistakes. Make sure you're mastering the basics, mastering your technique, and applying it from slow tempos all the way to fast tempos. All right, and those are your 3 tips. If you want to dive more into singles, take a look at the videos I have linked down below. I can walk you through all these ideas in much greater detail and get you faster and stronger and more consistent and all those good things at singles before you know it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.